my blood was to the point where I was having what could have had issues like having a stroke or a heart attack. And I was just like, man, I can't believe he's going to make me wait a week. And when I came back that week, I was sitting waiting for him. I was thinking, hey, I'm about to go off on this dude. He walks in and he said, this is going to be really difficult for me. And it's going to be really difficult for you. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, how's this going to be difficult for you? And he goes, man, I feel you're misdiagnosed. And like, doctors don't use misdiagnosed very often.
Welcome to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. Tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. And now your host, Nicolas Comstock.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this brand new episode of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I am your host, Nick Comstock. You guys, you're going to want to stay tuned for today's episode because I have a very unique story that I've never had on Nick Speaks before up until this point, and you're not going to want to miss it. Imagine being misdiagnosed with a life-threatening disease for 18 years, and then you find out that it is a simple fix that millions of people have, including myself. My guest has experienced that today, and we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I want to give you some show notes. I want to give a shout out to people who may be listening on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio, because Nick Speaks just expanded right before the new year to iHeartRadio and Amazon Music. So now not only are we on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, we are on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio, so you can use your smart speaker to access Nick Speaks if you have a smart speaker from Amazon. I'm not saying what it is because I don't want to set everyone in America's off. Okay, so you can watch us on YouTube and listen to us on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. All right, I also have a nightly blog that I started 3 weeks ago. So if you want to be a part of my nightly blog, just go over to Facebook, type in Nicolas Comstock, NICOLASCOMSTOCK, and you can follow me on Facebook or add me as a friend. Just tell me that you're there from the podcast, and you can see my nightly blog 7 days a week. I'm so excited. I started that right before the new year began, and it's off to a great start. You're not going to want to miss it. Okay, guys, back to the incredible, unique story I have. So today's guest, like I said, was diagnosed for 18 years with blood cancer. All come to find out that it was a simple fix all 18 years that millions of us have, including myself. Please help me welcome Dwayne Morton to the program. Dwayne, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I like to start out. I always thank the listeners. So I just want to tell people that wherever they're listening, whether it's morning, day, or night, like I just appreciate your time. I think time is the most valuable commodity, and especially coming from my story, it makes a lot of sense. So I like to thank the listeners for just giving me your time. And then, so Nicholas, man, thank you so much for inviting me onto your platform to share. I really appreciate it, and I know we just kind of met, but like I can tell you're a really solid guy, and I really just appreciate you inviting me on.
Absolutely. So Dwayne, take us back 18 years ago, and about a little bit about your life before this 18-year misdiagnosis happened to you.
Yeah, so before the diagnosis, I accomplished my dream. And when people say that, most people are like, "What? Like Most people think of just most people don't actually go through to get their dream. And so since I was 4 years old, I always wanted to be a basketball player past high school, whether that was play college ball, play professional. And so I ended up playing basketball internationally. And so I was actually a step away from actually signing a professional contract before I was injured. And so just to give people, there was this one part where I was like this high performing athlete. And then in 2006, just to kind of give a little bit more of a background, before I had these health challenges, the day before I had the health challenge, I actually ran 2 miles in the morning. And that's normal. That was a normal routine for me. And
Mm-hmm.
then that night, I played basketball for 3.5 hours. And then the next day, I couldn't get up 3 flights of stairs. And so that's what took me to the doctor. Yes, exactly. And that's what happened to me was like, it was just this literally like a switch. And um, so through this um, health challenge, I was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer, and it was very rare at the time. It's kind of more common now. There's more people that get it. And I don't know why that is. It's also, but the research started coming in more and more as I was getting the years that I went through. And so Nicholas, one of the biggest challenges for me was I felt like I had the flu every day.
Yeah.
So think about that for 18 years.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. I was just agreeing with you. So you felt like you had the flu every day.
Yeah.
And
So I was just tired and exhausted. And, one of the things that had to happen pretty early on, and I have the 2015 year. Um, I don't even know, but like just to let people in the disability community is like, I had to have one of these. And I know
yep.
how difficult that is from a pride ego standard. Also, for me, was I looked like a basketball player. I looked like I was very healthy. That was the other part. Now I gained weight, but by gaining weight, I just looked like the regular common person. So I would get a lot of hate for using the handicap parking tag.
Right. Because I want to stop right there just for a second because, a lot of people say to me all the time in my comments, not all disabilities are visible. And that's true. So I want to give people that grace there who have the handicap placard because not all disabilities are visible. And so we need to be mindful of that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so absolutely. And so I'll give an instance. One time I had a lot of my treatments was phlebotomies, which if for the people at home, that's just where they take blood. So it's similar to how the Native Americans do like bloodletting. So they just take blood away from me. My body like takes a day or two to like kind of recover. But like one day I was like, oh, I need to go to the grocery. So I was like, and this was actually very early on with me getting the handicap parking tag. I used it in a Kroger parking lot. And whenever I got out of the car, there was a lady and her kids, and they were yelling at me. They were like, you don't need to be parking there, like all this stuff. And like, I literally had like the bandage on that the tourniquet, I guess. I'm not sure what just
Yeah.
a
Tourniquet.
bandage.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, I pointed at it and they threw a Campbell soup can. And
Oh
so,
my God.
yeah, yeah. So they threw it. It hit my foot. I picked it up, and I used to pitch. I was pretty athletic growing up, and man, I was like, it took me a second, but I knew that like mindset stuff. I was like, do not throw this back, and I just dropped it. And I was just like, I just looked down, put my hands up, and was like, and I just walked to the grocery. Other thing, man, is like sometimes I would get to the front door and then I would almost want to collapse. So it was like that's how exhausted I was.
Because you couldn't breathe from
Yes.
the diagnosis that you were given. Now I want to back up a little bit. So when you were going flu, see, when you were going through the phlebotomy, um, did anybody say, "Hey, your blood looks weird," or "This is in your blood"? Like, did you feel any different pain from when they would withdraw blood outside of them poking you with needles and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. First of all, I was scared to death of needles. I never had donated blood because I just hated needles. I hated the idea of getting needles. I hated getting shots when I was younger. And I was just like, nope. It's like, I'm not doing this. Like, I just don't, I was scared to death of needles.
Yeah.
And you had asked about the blood. The best way to explain what was going on to me is if you are looking down a river and you have a barge and it's like got supplies, think of like that supply is building, bringing minerals and is bringing oxygen. But what if you just kept putting barges side by side, side by side, side by side? So there would be no flow in the river because they'd all be jammed up. That's what would happen in my bloodstream. Also, my red blood cells were massive, and they actually thought, like, here's the other thing is they actually were, I wouldn't really say accused, but they kind of were in a way. But they'd always ask me like, hey, are you sure you didn't use steroids? Because that was one of the things that people who had used steroids, they would get higher higher volume of red blood cells, or they would get bigger blood cells.
Yep.
Yeah. And for people in sports, Lance Armstrong, the guy from Live Strong, that's what he was doing. He was blood doping, and so they thought I was blood doping, man. And so at first I'm like, look, I don't do that. So it was interesting to see the science part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so did your test results, even though you found out eventually that you were misdiagnosed, did your test results come back saying that you had this cancer?
So it went off of my symptoms. It really didn't go off of like, hey, we see this cancer. It was off of symptoms. Like I'd also had a sleep apnea test, and that was one thing that I passed it. It was a home test. Should have been to the sleep center. Now that was early on, so that was another thing. So also, I think sometimes in the Western medical community, we put people in the box. So one person diagnoses, the other person just says, okay, this person was diagnosed with this. We don't look into it. I had actually went through a couple of, so the doctor who released me from the blood cancer, he was my 7th doctor. So I went through 6 doctors. And then there was a time where I went to, I had a bone marrow test taken through my hip. That showed a less than 1% chance of me having cancer. That should have been probably where me and the doctors got together and like had more of a conversation. I actually asked 2 of the doctors about it and said, I don't really understand, like why less than 1%? He's like, well, it just hasn't started mutating yet. That was the answer I got. That should have been the answer that I went and be like, hey, I'm gonna get another opinion. But I didn't at the time, and so that was about 6 years before I found out I was misdiagnosed. You know, go ahead.
Wow. That's crazy, my friend. Did you ever think during this time, did they give you a time limit with this blood cancer when they diagnosed you with it?
Yeah. So originally I was given 5 years. So when they first saw me, they thought it was so elevated that I was at the end part, and I just somehow had just been very resilient, or they were just like, they couldn't believe it. That was the thing. It was my blood count, all that stuff was like extremely high. And they were like, okay. So they thought that I was further along. Just to give you some context, Nicholas, and the listeners, they gave me 5 years. I was year 4. I was like, okay, I have 1 year to live. Like I was thinking time going down. And so what I did, man, is I just went and done bucket list stuff. I went to basketball and games that I wanted to. I flew around the country, saw people that I wanted to see. Like I just did bucket list stuff. And then about the 2 months after I depleted all my savings and 401k, they were like, hey, we think you have more time. We think you like have like 10 to 15 years. And so that was where it was like, well, now what I do. And so it was just, I was extremely, extremely fortunate to have great family members, great friends that were supportive. Also, early on in the diagnosis, I decided I wasn't going to get married or have kids. And so it was just like, I didn't want to pass the burden on to anyone else. That was the thing, was I was just thinking of
Yeah.
someone else. I wasn't even thinking about myself.
Yeah. So did you like after the diagnosis was found out that it was wrong, did you think, okay, maybe I can get married now? Or is that not a thing now?
Great question. So yes, all that stuff came back on the table once I found I was healthy. And I would say I'd be a fool if I wasn't, because I always knew that like I would be a great partner. I also knew that like I have really good emotional intelligence. But I also knew that I went through a lot of stuff to gain that. And so that was another thing. Um, and lucky for me is like I found someone that I'm talking to, and we're just getting to know each other. But the point is that is definitely on the table. It's definitely not something that like I was like, hey, it was as soon as I found out I was healthy, I was like, okay, this is where I can continue my life. And I chose how to respond also. And so also, Nicholas, before I found out I was misdiagnosed, I went through a near death experience in a police shooting where I was a bystander. And it was a very close thing. So that's kind of where my wheels started spinning of like being curious, like what would happen if I was healthy? And so the power of the mind is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So you're in the midst of the diagnosis and you end up being in the crosshairs of a police shooting. Did you think at that point, oh my God, this is like, if this can't get any worse. Cause a lot of people say this can't get any worse. And then they say, don't say that because then it will. So,
Yeah,
uh,
so it's a great question. So I've never been a woe is me person. I have been in the victimhood mindset, and you know, one of the things that I want to share too is when I went to the doctor's offices, I wanted them to see my personality. I
sure.
wanted them to I wanted them to see a loving and caring person, but also I wanted to be kind. I was super kind. I was super polite because I felt like if I'm that light that those people can only see one time a day by me opening a door and saying, "Hey, how's your day?" And like I've had people that were like mad. They're like, "Well, we're at a cancer thing. Like, what do you think?" Like I had people to do that, and I would just like I would change it up. I would just let them know. But also, I was really good friends with the staff, the people who made the
Yeah.
appointments. Like I think that was important.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever think, wow, you know, these people went to 10 years of medical school, probably pre med, and how did they not catch this? Like, what the hell happened?
I mean, so I think just knowing how the Western medicine works, they put me in a box. They never let me out. Also, you got to look at it as a dollar sign. Like I made people money. I mean, insurance companies'
Yeah,
money. There is no reason for them to go and say, "Oh yeah, well we found this." I was very fortunate to find a doctor who it was my first visit there, so he reviews my records, and when he reviewed my records, he was like, "This doesn't make a lot of sense." And then I also believe in this, Nicholas. If I want grace, I have to allow grace. So
yeah,
if I want to be forgiven, I should forgive. I've lived my life like that for a very long time. And
absolutely. Amen.
I feel I feel just that foundation really
Hmm.
helped me. And then also I had a really cool experience when I was 19 when I was playing basketball. I met a 5-year-old boy who had not eaten in 3 days. And it wasn't my choice. Like it wasn't like he was fasting. He was like, hey, he was starving. And one of the things that I took away was I take stuff for granted every day. So why don't I look at things from a more of a grateful standpoint, from a gratitude standpoint? And so that truly was my foundation of gratitude. And so I've lived like that since I was 19. I'll be 49 here in 2 months in a day.
Yeah,
But the thing is like when you live like that, when you have these instances, these challenges, it allows you to not look to as the into that woe is me attitude, because I just never had that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, from the point of you couldn't walk, you were getting out of breath, what were some of the other symptoms that were like, whoa? You said it was like flu. Were you throwing up? Were you
So
all of it?
definitely, so it wasn't like that. It wasn't the physical, like it was some of the physical. It's mostly fatigue, out of breath. I had very little stamina, so whatever I did, it was like I had a gas tank, and I started the day with like a quarter of a tank of a gas tank. So I had to like manage throughout my day. Where am I going to get my nap in? Where am I going to like? What am I going to eat? All of these things had to be considered all the time. And there was days, like I'll be honest, Nicholas, there was days that I didn't take a shower, and I used to be a 4 shower type person.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because I was an athlete, man. So like I would wake up,
Sure.
take a shower, work out, run, come back, take another shower. And then if I went to play basketball or like after work, I would take a shower before and then when I got home. Like, so yeah, I was like a 4 shower person, man. And, that was the thing though. And so what I learned was I had to celebrate the wins. And I actually talk about it on it's actually a thing that I call Dwayne's daily plan of attack. And it's these 4 principles that I really talk about. And it's gratitude is the first thing. First thing I do is I'll just wake up and say, thank you, God, for giving me this day. Because there's
Absolutely.
so many people that don't have it. So that
Yeah.
first step is such a huge step. And then the second one is going to be self-care. Now, self-care changed for me a lot in the last few years. So self-care used to be just Dwayne would stretch in bed before he got up because he had really bad knees and was like, hey, I'm just going to stretch. And like, some people pray, some people do all different things. For me, self-care has been a lot of journaling in the last part of the last few years. Um, so then I take a runner's approach to the day. I think of it in small, simple steps: left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And that could be, and I know that, with this being the disability community, you can still break it down into some simple steps.
Hmm.
The one part of me running is I never look back on the past. Like if I sit there, I'm not going to go anywhere, right? But what the past brings up is you stay depressed. And the same thing is if I'm looking at the destination, then I'm going to get off direction, but it's also going to bring anxiety. And so the fourth step, Nicholas, is going to be adaptable. I need to be able to say if there's an unexpected bill, if someone gets mad at me, if someone cuts me off, I just take that in stride. And that's one of the things that I was able to do even through the diagnosis when they said, hey, um, we need you to come in more times, or I was very adaptable. So it's just kind of like if I'm
Yeah.
driving a car and I see a pothole, I don't just drive straight. Like that would be insane. You're going to take center
Oh, yeah.
impact every time. But if you just swerve a little bit, you can actually completely miss it, or you're going to lessen the impact.
Yeah, and it's very fitting that you're bringing that up because that's all the disability community is about is being adaptable, being flexible. And if you're not going to survive in this community
Right.
at all.
So
Um,
absolutely. That was so just real quick.
yeah,
The disability community is such a strong, resilient community, and they don't necessarily realize it because a lot of people don't point it out from what I've seen. And so the people that I do know that do understand that they're resilient, I feel like it's a smoother transition for them.
yeah, yeah. When this first happened to you, what kind of job did you have? What kind of work were you doing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I was a kind of like a data analyst for a large insurance company.
So I know you said you depleted your 401k, which really, and I didn't find the name of this movie, but I told you about it in the pre-call. If those of you know the movie, drop it in the comments. I know something holidays in the title. but it's with Queen Latifah. And this is actually what we're discussing here with Dwayne is the exact same thing that happened to Queen Latifah in the movie. She was told, I believe it was, the character was told that she had less than a year to live. And then she came back to the doctor and they're like, "You're completely fine." But she did what Dwayne did. And I think the moral of the story is yes, we need to be financially comfortable. We need to be, good stewards of what God has given us, but live every day like it's your last because you never know when it's going to be. How did this affect you financially when you had to leave your job? Were you still working during this
No,
time?
I actually got fired. I actually lost my job because I went over FMLA time. Actually, a day after I was carted out to go to the ER. So I mean, yeah, no, no, it was a very um it was a very sad moment. I was very disappointed because I had worked really hard for that company and also for those people. They just didn't realize that like I wasn't being lazy. Like I was giving everything I had, and everything I had just didn't meet the par of what they wanted. They wanted someone to be there every day in attendance. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that.
Right. Right. Did you ever try to apply for like social security disability or how did that work out?
Yeah, so actually I did try that and got denied. It was actually after I had a really bad, I don't know, I'd say a breakdown. I had a really bad breakdown at the oncologist. It was, normally you sit in the waiting room, and for some reason all the seats were filled. So they're like, "Hey, like come back here." And me and my mom sat at a where people were getting chemo. And I had actually had an experience with a friend of mine that I went to chemo with him, and I actually lost that person, and so I broke down, and then I just couldn't figure out how to get out of that hole. Actually, started having social anxiety. Did not want to go anywhere, like to go to restaurants. Did not want anything to do, and so I was a mortgage broker at the time, and I was I just was like, hey, I can't do this anymore. And so this we started exploring the disability part. But they denied me. They were like, hey, you're we don't feel like you're at that point where you need this yet. And so for 18 and a half years, man, I would like work for a little bit. Basically my timeline was about a month and a half, and then I would get sick. So and sometimes it'd be even earlier than that, but it was definitely difficult to hold a job.
Wow. That's amazing. And your resilience is amazing. So take us to the day where you get the call, come in or whatever it was, and take us to the day where you found out about the misdiagnosis and what you actually had.
Yeah, so surreal even thinking about it. I went in one time and they were like, we got a new, there was a new doctor, and they were like, hey, he can't see you right now. How about a week later? Well, I was panicking because I thought I had, like, my blood was to the point where I was um, having issue. What could have had issues like having a stroke or a heart attack. That was really the main things for me to be worried about, and those are pretty serious. And I was just like, man, I can't believe he's going to make me wait a week. And when I came back that week, um, when I was sitting waiting for him, I was thinking, hey, I'm about to go off on this dude. Like, I really am about to go off on this dude because of just the stress. He walks in and he said, this is going to be really difficult for me, and it's going to be really difficult for you. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, how's this going to be difficult for you? And he said, he goes, man, he goes, I feel you have been, you're misdiagnosed. And like, doctors don't use misdiagnosed very often. Um,
No, they don't.
right. And so he goes, I don't believe you have this. He gave me some things. He gave me the backstory. He's like, you had this bone marrow test. Did that show up with cancer? I was like, no. He's like, well, he's like, that's really where we should have That's where someone should have allowed you to leave. Like that, you should have been released right then. And he just told me, he said, I believe you either have COPD or sleep apnea. And he asked me, he goes, let me ask you a question. You smoke? I was like, no, man, I've never smoked anything in my entire life. He was like, well, he's like, then it looks like he's like, you need to get a visit with a sleep center. And he released me. He didn't say, hey, come back here in like 2 weeks or come back in a month and let's just check your blood. No, he was like, hey, I'm releasing you. And so, I have some friends at the office and I talked to them and I was like, I was very weak my legs were weak. I was shaking. I was teary eyed. Uh, Even right now, man, I get teary eyed about it. Cause the other thing I want to tell you is like, we get miracles every day. Like my breath is a miracle. My heartbeat's a miracle, all these things. And
Absolutely.
I received a miracle gift wrapped. It's also 4 days before my birthday, also in 2024. So it's March 8th.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That
it's this early birthday present, but also sometimes when we get miracles, we still doubt them. And so when he said that, I was like, are you sure? I was like, man, I've had this for 18 years. And he's like, no, man. He was like, I really feel like this is, this is where we part ways. And so, I went and got I told my friend, I was like, I just wish I had some type of documentation to explain. And she was like, okay, we'll work on it. And as I was driving home, she called me and said, hey, the doctor has some documentation. Come by and get it whenever you want. And I just immediately drove back, grabbed the documentation, went home and talked to my parents. And so my mom and dad both were like, hey, let's get a second opinion. And I was like, nah, I was like, I'm not getting a second opinion right now. I'm going to go get that sleep center test. And so I think it was like 2 days after my birthday. So about 6 days after I went to the regular primary care. We set up a sleep center test. And when it came back, like it definitely was, I had severe sleep apnea. So that's another thing. It was like, it was severe. I mean, it was like super severe.
Yeah. I've been diagnosed with that too. When we have more time, I'll tell you the story off air that I'm actually going through right now with sleep apnea. But um that's crazy. Did you have to so were you living on your own before the diagnosis? You were, right?
So me and my brother were roommates. And lucky for me, like we we really worked well together during things, and then at the same time, like we butted heads at things because um, he thought he had to be difficult with me because he knew, hey, like I don't want him to just quit, and so um,
Yeah.
I think I think that's good and bad. I think sometimes like that's really good, and sometimes it's bad. For me, is like I always had a really strong mindset, and I kind of thought at first he alienated me. And then what I did when I took a step back to see it from his perspective, he was just trying to motivate me. And he just saw me with no energy. And also, like, me and him are best friends. So, like, when I say I roomed with my brother, it was like I'm rooming with my best friend. It was totally different. It was like, hey, I'm getting a room with my best friend, and we get to hang out, we get to do things. And then all of a sudden, I got sick. And so, yeah, man, there was a lot of responsibility that fell on his shoulders, making sure rent was paid, making sure that not only when he went to get groceries, he had to get groceries for both of us. So there's just a lot of things that just kind of fell on his lap. And then, I would find work after those 4 years. I ended up, 2014. I moved. I was on my own for a year, and dude, it was a disaster, but it was a disaster that needed to happen to really let me know, like, hey, I need to move home. I need to get back to where I have people that I know I can fall back and support. And
Yeah.
when that happened, things actually eased up a stress level. And you know, I mentioned about the breakdown and having social anxiety. I pretty much just put the car on neutral. I would sit around, play video games, and I'm just thinking, hey, I have 2 minutes left in this game. Like, what do I want to do? And I just wasn't
Yeah.
motivated to do anything.
Yeah. So I don't know if you said it at the beginning of the podcast, but what was the actual name of the blood cancer that they diagnosed you with? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember. So it's polycythemia vera is what it's called.
Say that again. You said it real fast.
Yeah, yeah, it's called polycythemia vera, and so
Polycythemia vera. Okay.
yeah, it just means that you have too many red blood cells,
Okay.
and it's where your bone marrow is just producing red blood cells like crazy, and it doesn't. The blood cells lose their ability to carry oxygen.
Wow.
You'd asked a couple of other things that I wanted to pick up on. You had said what was other symptoms? I would lose my train of thought.
Yeah.
I've always been a very intelligent person, so like, uh, I would struggle just keeping things together. Also, like I used to go to class in college and never take a note and just completely get everything.
Mhm.
And I lost that ability for during that period because my brain wasn't functioning correctly. So there was things that like I really had to like reorganize. Hey, how I do life.
Yeah, and I bet that was a real pain to do that. I'm sure. And mm, how do you, because you did all kinds of things. You did fundraisers for, correct me if I'm wrong, you said in the pre-call that you did fundraisers for leukemia,
Yeah,
right?
for the for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which they handle all blood cancers.
And so did you kind of did you kind of feel like a fraud at that point when you had to go back and tell them, "Hey, I actually don't have this," or did that not cross your mind?
Yeah, man. So I appreciate you asking that. Actually, that was one of the things that I did. Like, I was feeling like, oh man, like I got to go back to all these people and say, like, I raised money for people and on a false, a false diagnosis. And so I contacted some of my friends and they're like, hey man, like, did you know? I was like, well, no, of course. They're like, okay, well, then it also, man, was a chance for me to extend grace to myself. And this is the one thing that I really want to like hone in on people. Self compassion is so important. Self anything is more important than anything you can do for someone else. So if you can do more self care, more self compassion for yourself, you're going to actually be able to give that more to other people. Look at it as if I'm holding a cup and I pour water in it. Um, and if I'm pouring out all the time of my cup, I don't have water, right? It's the same thing as like the gift of love and caring for people. If I don't have a full cup or any in that cup, I can't give it out. So I think that's the most important thing out of anything I say is just be able to take that analogy of on an airplane. They tell you when the mask comes down, the oxygen mask, you put it on yourself before you help others because if you don't put it on yourself, you're going to not be able to help others.
Yeah, that's true. So we're several years later now. How do you live life now as opposed to before the misdiagnosis?
So we're not several years later.
Oh,
It'll be 2 months.
okay.
Um,
So we're 2 years later.
yeah. So, um, no, like so 2024 was just me healing. It was me realizing, okay, I'm healthy. I have this life that I can get. So one thing that was to me was really big was I want to go out and shoot basketball. I want to do this every day. I want to do it how I used to do it. I want to run. There was these things that I wanted to do, but what I realized is like I'm older. Also, my body didn't function that way. So how do I do that? And so I started stretching and those things. I took my time to get in even into that type of shape. Um, but really, what I realize now is that even shooting basketball is not a goal of mine. What I ended up doing is I found my purpose, and my purpose is to speak. My purpose is to speak the truth and to tell people, be a podcast host, be an author, be an inspirational speaker, speak on stages, and share the lessons that went, share the lessons that I have gained through this ordeal. And you don't have to be misdiagnosed. You don't have to be shot at to get the lessons that I can fulfill for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And just the fact that you have been so resilient, and you don't, I think you told me in the pre-call the other day that you didn't really have any bitterness really. This was just life. and
Yeah.
and the fact that you have that attitude, because I want to tell you, I mean, I struggle with my disability on a daily. And if I had been misdiagnosed with something on top of my disability, there would definitely be some answers. There would definitely be like, what the hell? Definitely be some four-letter words I'd be throwing at some doctors.
Yeah, so I a lot of times people ask me about litigation and stuff, and like I looked into it, and the thing is like, why would I spend $12 to get $4 back? I was already broke, man. So like, there was the other aspect of like, this does not make sense. Like, I go broke just to make somebody accountable, but
Yeah.
really, when I sat down, I was more at peace by not doing anything. And I'll say it again: I was more at peace by doing without doing anything. And the reason I was at peace is I didn't have the stress of like trying to prove or having to tell the story in front of a bunch of people and let them judge. Like, who wants to be judged? No one. And so that was really what kind of set me free, though. And it allows me to have these story and be able to share it openly, because guess what? More than likely, they would have slapped an NDA on me or something. And that's the thing, is I need to be able to share this story with people and to show what I've been through, and then also where I'm going.
Yeah, and you do that. So before we wrap up today, because I know you said you had another appointment to go to, why don't you tell people what you're doing now and all the podcast ventures you have, and how they can find you and all that?
Yeah, so I really appreciate this. So I have two websites. I have DwayneMorton.com, and that's more for me as a speaker and at the podcast that for a guest. I have showuptowin.com with the number 2, and that is going to be where I'm building a community, a coaching community that I've got. So I believe that if you coach through a group project, the community has other people other than me to look at. Also, when I answer a question or I coach somebody, they can learn something through someone else's um, issues and apply it to themselves. So you're also getting lessons from other people. And so that's showuptowin.com. And if you join the wait list now, which is I'm about to start that very soon. I'm actually going to send you you'll get for a free gift, you'll get a PDF with the Dwayne's Daily Plan of Attack. I became a published author on May 16th of 2025, which just so happened to be the third
Uh,
anniversary of the shooting. So you can get that book. It's called The Bounce Back Blueprint, Become Bulletproof. And you can get that on Amazon. And then, of course, I'm getting ready to start speaking on stages, and I do podcast guesting.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And we didn't really delve too much in the shooting, but I know that you talk a lot about that on your other podcast, and you talk a lot about that in your experiences and stuff. And so I would encourage, and I'm definitely going to do it, check out Dwayne's podcast. And once he starts his speaking career, if he's ever in your area, go see him and go hear his story live and let him encourage you. And he's a friend of my podcast producer, Kyle Goodnight. And Dwayne reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to tell my story." And I'm so glad he did, because like I said at the beginning of this is a really unique story that we never had on Nick Speaks before, and I'm very glad that we've had it today. Dwayne, thank you so much for being here. Any last words for the Nick Speaks audience?
Just want to say thank you to the listeners and yourself. But one thing I do want to add is just the part of the podcast part is I reached out to you because I felt like there was a part of my story that wasn't told. I don't tell this. Like, most people get me on for the misdiagnosis or the shooting, but no one asked me the questions about the handicap parking tag or the disability part that I had to endure, or for a short period. And that's the other thing, is like, I can actually relate to you guys, but I only related for just a little short period. And now I'm
Mm-hmm.
back healthy. So it makes me actually understand even more because now I'm back to where I was. And so I just want to make sure that people understand that I am a friend of your community. Um, and I am praying that everyone receives the same miracle that I got.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And we really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and open with your story. And I know a lot of people in the disabled community say they hate it when we're being told we're an inspiration, but your story really is inspiring. And um, I appreciate you coming on my platform and just being so vulnerable and sharing your story. And so, guys, like I said, um, go check him out wherever he ends up being in your area. Go check out his podcast, sign up for everything he's got. Everything that he's mentioned will be in the show notes. So be sure to look in the show notes for his podcast, for when he starts speaking in different places. And if you have other podcasts, if there are other podcasters out there, get him on your show and let him talk to your audience as well. Dwayne, I'm so glad that you're better now and that you're using your story for good. That means a lot. And thank you for being here. And we will see you guys next week. This is the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I will see you next week for an all-new episode. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a new episode. You can find Nick across all platforms by visiting his link tree in the show notes. And please leave a comment to join the conversation. Until next time, keep speaking up, keep speaking out, and keep speaking loud.